In this video, let's take a look at some examples of statutes so we can see what they look like. And I have here an example that comes from the California Penal Code. Now notice that it doesn't say Penal Code anywhere here, so if you were to photocopy this statute from a code book, you should write down the code title where your statute appears, the California Penal Code, so you remember where it came from. But I'll just tell you that this statute happens to come from the California Penal Code. And up at the top, we have the statutory section number, section 129. That's what this little symbol is. It's the section symbol. Okay? Each code consists of sequentially numbered sections, section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way on up. And so this statute happens to be section 129 of the Penal Code. And next to that section number, we have a title, false return required to be under oath. Now this title is not technically part of the law. It's not part of the law because the legislature didn't enact a title along with the statute. This title is just added by the publisher of the code. And the publisher puts this title in here to make it helpful for you so that at a glance you can see what section 129 is dealing with. Otherwise you'd have to read through the entire statute before you knew what section 129 was all about. Now, the actual text of the statute, as enacted by the legislature, the statute itself, is just this. Just these 3 lines. That's it. This is statute. This is the language that was voted on by the legislature and passed by the legislature and then signed into law by the executive. Right? That's it. Everything else is not part of the statute. Everything else is something that we call, all this other stuff down here, okay, this is all what we call annotations. Annotations. So let's talk about what annotations are. If this whole thing is in the statute and only this is the statute, well, what is all of this all about? So, well, first let's see that immediately underneath the statute, directly beneath the statute, we have some information here about when this statute was actually added. Right? This is the information that you would use if you wanted to find this statute in the session laws. Remember, the session laws are just published in chronological order. So you'd have to know specific information, specifically the date of when that statute was enacted. So now with this information, you could see in the session laws when this statute actually became law. But then all this other stuff is information that's added by the publisher. It's not part of the law. So we have, for example, here some legislative history. Okay, this tells us about the history of this statute, where it came from, and why. Why did the legislature enact this statute? So we could find some of that information here. We also have some information about law review articles. All right, so if you wanted to learn more about Section 129, you could read this law review article, 17 Hastings Law Journal 57. It's published in 1965. And presumably this article talks about the same topic that's covered by Section 129. So here's a secondary source that you could read if you want to find more information about this law. And we also have some library and research references. Okay? This is, again, if you want to do some more research on this topic. Now, this particular statute happens to be published by a publisher called West. And West has this really neat system for doing research. They've come up with something called a key number system that allows you to research other authorities, other statutes, other cases, even other secondary sources that all deal with the same topic. So West assigns a key number to every authority that they have. And the publishers at West have decided that this particular topic deals with perjury. So if you were to look up perjury, key number 1, key number 10, you'd be able to find some other resources that deal with this same subject, the same subject that you would find in Section 129. Right? This is CJS perjury. This is a reference to a legal encyclopedia. CJS stands for Corpus Juris Secundum. It's the name of a legal encyclopedia. And in that legal encyclopedia, if you were to look up perjury, sections 2, 3, 5 to 8, 21, and 25 to 28, you'd be able to read more about this topic of perjury. You might even read specifically about Section 129. Here are some more encyclopedia references. some references to treatises and practice guides if you want to read more about those. And finally, down here we have some annotations that are really helpful. These are notes of decisions. And the decisions that we're referring to here are court decisions. So any courts that have dealt with this topic of Section 129, right, and have published opinions on them, West has found those cases and summarized them for you. So that's what this is. It's a little summary of the case. And then if you want to read the case itself, the publishers have actually given you the citation to the case so you can look it up and read it for yourself. And then again, the key number system number, so you could look up some more authorities that deal with perjury at key 1 or key 10. All right, so this is an example of a California statute. Let's look now at an example of a federal statute. Now remember that in the federal statutory set, we don't have codes. We only have one code, the United States Code, and the code is divided up into titles. So this statute comes from Title 16 of the United States Code, and it's Section 1381 of Title 16. Now the United States Code is usually abbreviated USC. You'll notice here this is USCA, and that's because this is the United States Code annotated. Right? The USCA is the West publisher's version of the United States Code. It has the same statute, but it has just added its annotations. And this particular statute, Section 1381 of Title 16, the West publishers have given it the title Commercial Fisheries Gear Development. All right. Well, if you look down here at the statute, it's pretty long, at least longer. So you wouldn't want to read through this whole thing to figure out what it's all about, so you might be actually grateful this time that the publishers have given you a title. Now within Section 1381 we have some subsections, subsection A, subsection B, subsection C. These are all part of the actual statute. Okay, so this is, again, this is part of the statute. This is what Congress enacted into law. Underneath that, though, we have, again, the annotations. So the annotations start here. Right? But first, here is our nice little reference to the public law, to the statutes at large. So you can look this up in the statutes at large if you wanted to. It wouldn't have any of the annotations, though, which is what's really helpful when you're looking at an annotated code. So again, in our annotations, we have our legislative history. We've got some library references with our helpful key site numbers, our key numbers, our West key numbers. And we'll learn more about this when we deal with research next semester. Some more cross-references. These cross-references tell you about other statutes that might be relevant if you're doing research on this particular topic. Right? So the publishers have said, well, if you're looking at this particular statute, you might also care about Title 16, Section 1372 and 1371. And finally, down at the bottom, we also have the notes of decisions. Okay? So these are some cases that have dealt with this statute. Right? And they've even broken them up into different categories. The statutes have different categories. If you want to find out about any cases that dealt with research and observation, you might want to read this little blurb here, and then you could even look up the actual case because the citation is given. And after the citation, we still have West's key number system references, so you could look these up to read about it some more in some other authorities. All right, so these are some examples of statutes and the parts of the annotated statutes.